Good evening, I'm John Lenz, City and State's Managing Editor, and this is Last Look. Today I'm joined by Tom Suozzi, the former Nassau County Executive, who's running for the seat again this year. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So this year could be described as the year of the comeback. You have Eliot Spitzer, Anthony Weiner. They've both got a little more attention than you.
I really don't want to be put in that category, if that's okay.
But tell us a little bit about why you're running again for a seat that you lost, was it 4 years ago?
Yeah, in 2009, I lost by 386 votes out of 250,000 cast, which were 100,000 less votes than people had voted in 2001 when I first ran for county executive. So 350,000 people voted in 2001. In 2009, only 250,000 people voted, and I lost by 386 votes. The country was in a bad mood, mad at the president, mad at Governor Patterson at the time. Democrats were running everything. Tea Party movement was just starting to come alive. And quite frankly, I didn't take the race as seriously as I should have. And I lost by 386 votes. So I'm coming back because I believe in public service. I've always been interested in public service. And I feel like I'd be wasting my 16 years of experience, 8 years as a mayor, 8 years as county executive, involved in statewide politics. I'd be wasting all that great experience if I didn't get back into public life, and I can't stand what they're doing to my hometown.
Now, how did that experience change you as a politician?
Losing?
Losing 4 years ago.
Yeah, losing, being out in the private sector. You know, for the past 3.5 years I've been in the private sector. I worked for a law firm, Harris Beach, and I worked for investment banking firm Lazard Frere, which is an internationally known firm. And when I was I first became mayor when I was 31 years old. So I was the boss, you know, of a pretty big operation, full-time job when I was 31. And I did that straight through to when I was county executive 16 years later in 2009. And as county executive, I had 8,500 employees. I had reduced the workforce from over 9,500 down to 8,500. But so I was the boss. And I was used to I'd have an idea, and I'd say, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. And I'd tell everybody, you know, direct them, this is what you're supposed to do. When I was in the private sector, I found out, you know, I wasn't the boss anymore, and I'd have an idea, and I'd have to go and say, hey, you think maybe we could try it this way? So it was a very good learning experience for me as far as working with other people, collaborating, building relationships to try and push an agenda forward.
So do you think that would change how you approach the office if you are elected county executive again?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I was very much, you know, we're doing it this way and let's go ahead. And I have much more of a sense of working together to try and build relationships. And something I learned also, I ran for governor of New York State against Eliot Spitzer in a Democratic primary, which didn't turn out very well for me. Didn't turn out very well for him either, obviously. But that was something I learned during that experience about how important it was to build relationships. I was always focused on let's do this policy and this is the right thing to do, and I really matured being out of politics about how important it was to have relationships in politics and building relationships.
Now, there's some serious problems with Nassau County's finances.
Awful.
And shortly after you left office, there was a financial control board put into place. You've criticized the incumbent, Ed Mangano, for increasing the debt, but do you bear any responsibility for the fiscal situation after 8 years in office?
Yeah, well, let me make it clear. The financial control board was put in place in 1999. So when the economy was booming, Bill Clinton was the president of the United States of America. There was federal surpluses, low unemployment, record low unemployment, record high home ownership. Internet revolution was booming. The economy was great all over America. Nassau County was on the brink of bankruptcy, rated the worst run county in America with its bond rating one step above junk bond status, and a control board was put in place, which is an extraordinary thing. You know, New York City in the 70s, Buffalo, where they lost half their population, Yonkers, major financial problems. Nassau County's economy was great, but the government was so poorly run that it was put under a financial control board. So I worked to fix that problem, and I did fix the problem. I raised taxes my first year in office. I didn't raise them again for 6 years in a row, the only county in New York State that didn't raise taxes for 6 years in a row. I reduced the workforce by 1,200 people, not through layoffs, but by not replacing people when they retired. I did consolidations. I cut the debt. I did fought with the unions, the public employee unions, police contract. You know, police unions wanted to, you know, they ran a $3 million ad campaign against me. So, but now when cops see me, they say, "Boy, we wish you were back." So we made all these changes And as a result, we had 13 bond upgrades from Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's. That's more than any other municipality in America, more than any other state, county, town, city, village, school district, more than anybody in America, 13 bond upgrades. And we had 8 surpluses. And we reduced the debt from $3.2 billion under my predecessor down to $2.9 billion. Now Mangano comes into office and he says, oh, it was so tough, it's so difficult. Yeah, it was difficult. It was the worst economy in America's history, starting in 2008 when I was in office. You know, when I left office in December of 2009, they did a bond rating analysis, Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's. We were kept stable. We were not downgraded, not put on negative credit watch. So in comes Mangano, tough situation, no question about it, like everybody else in America, and he made it worse. I had 13 bond upgrades. They've had 3 bond downgrades, and they're on negative credit watch. I had 8 balanced budgets and surpluses. He's had 2 deficits, one of which he admits to, one of which they're lying about. I worked with this control board that was put in place in 1999. They sued the control board and were taken over by the control board and were put in what they call hard controls. I reduced the debt. He's increased the debt to way above what it was when I first came into office, to $3.5 billion, the highest debt Nassau County's had in its entire history.
Still, the county was in poor fiscal shape when you left office. Was there anything you could have done differently or could have done better to improve things?
Well, Nassau County was in poor fiscal shape, not because of the county government, but because Lehman Brothers went bust, the whole world economy went bust, and the whole world fell apart. We lost $150 million in sales tax revenue in 2009. And we made some very tough decisions in 2009, some of which contributed to my losing the election. But again, we were stable by Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's. So I have to say that, you know, we really did a good job governmentally. I did a bad job politically, but governmentally we did a good job. And that's reflected. Forget about what I say. Nobody believes what I say. Nobody believes what Mangano says. We're politicians. Nobody believes us. Look at Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's. Look at the editorial pages after I lost the election, the New York Times editorial page saying that, you know, the voters actually made a mistake. I was very appreciative of them doing that. But, you know, we did a good job governmentally, and we did the best we could regarding the finances in these dramatically bad financial times. And the problems that the county faces now are the making of poor decision making by Ed Mangano and his administration in the midst of a worldwide financial recession.
Now, before you face off against Ed Mangano, you have a Democratic primary opponent, Adam Haber, and he's criticized you for raising salaries for political appointees. He put out an ad about that. I was wondering how you'd respond to those claims.
Well, I don't really make a point of responding to Adam Haber, but I'll respond to your question about giving raises to political appointees. I mean, my salary was raised as county executive, but that was a result of a bipartisan legislative committee that made recommendations that the county executive, the district attorney, the comptroller, the county clerk, the other countywide offices should have their salaries commensurate with those of Suffolk County and other counties in the downstate region. And other positions like that were raised to be competitive with similar salaries in the area. It wasn't just made up. It wasn't like, you know, somebody's a flunky and we gave them a job and gave them a raise. It was really done as part of a systematic system to address inequities in the workplace to try and retain good talent. I had great people. I mean, my officials that worked for me are now in major jobs, either in the private sector or in the public sector, all over the state of New York. So these were not hacks. As a matter of fact, one of the things I may have done poorly was that I hired the best and the brightest type of people, and I didn't care about their political registration, and they didn't work very well on my politics. They didn't do my politics, which is one of the reasons I lost by 386 votes.
Another big issue in Long Island is the Long Island Power Authority. In the wake of Superstorm Sandy, it reared its head. They came up with this restructuring plan. The governor just signed it into law this week. I think Ed Mangano has been supportive of it. What do you think about this restructuring of LIPA? Do you think there's any risk that it could raise rates in the long run?
You know, this is I've always historically stayed out of utility politics because we've always had enough of our own problems, but LIPA did an awful job, as I believe the county did during Hurricane Sandy. And the problem with LIPA is that it has a monopoly, like most utilities do, but they had no public service commission overseeing their performance either. So they had no protections as far as overseeing what they did, and they were not forced to reform themselves from either the profit motive incentive, because they were a monopoly, or from the regulatory incentive because they didn't have the Public Service Commission overseeing them. So the fact that they had, it was kind of like the county government. County was rated the worst run county in America before I came into office, and they had no procedures, no processes. Everything was done on, in big ledgers, with like the quill, the ink and blow the computers, no systems. When you have a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, it has to be run like a private sector enterprise with procedures and processes and internal controls. I mean, I'm a CPA, I'm a lawyer, I worked for an investment banking firm. Let me point out that the investment banking firm I worked for, Lazard Frere, actually did a report to recommend the privatization of LIPA. I did not work on that. I was not involved in that whatsoever, but just in full disclosure. I think it's a good idea to change LIPA and what they're doing right now. It's a question of whether or not they should have gone to full privatization, which is what the Lazard report recommended and the governor first pushed. They've now gone to a hybrid where they're going to privatize most of it and they're going to keep the debt in the LIPA public entity. The purpose of that is to get lower interest rates, but the spread between the private sector and public sector interest rates are much lower than they've ever been historically. So I support the governor's move, and hopefully it'll be the right thing for the people of Long Island.
And you mentioned your race against Eliot Spitzer some years back.
I hate bringing that up.
Well, he's obviously in the news now for running for city controller.
Yeah.
What do you think about his candidacy?
Eliot Spitzer's a very smart guy. He's a very talented person. He's obviously had a great career as the Attorney General. He has to overcome the fact that, he's always been perceived as my way or the highway type of guy. And back to my flaws that I was talking about before, I was a CEO from when I was 31 years old to when I was 40, whatever that was, 7 or 8 years old, 47 years old. And I've learned that you have to build these relationships, you have to collaborate with people. And I wasn't as bad as Eliot was as far as, my way, the highway type of thinking. So he has to overcome the perception that as comptroller, will he be able to work with the mayor and, keep the city running. So that's what this campaign is going to have to be, is about him proving that to people, that he can work well with others. But it's going to be an interesting race. Scott Stringer's a very talented guy. He has a lot of endorsements. He's a good politician as far as campaigning, and he's also good as far as public policy and government. And Eliot, of course, is a very smart, able guy that has some personality flaws, obviously. That wasn't never that great a politician, I never thought. But he's got this tremendous name recognition and celebrity status that he's going on all these national TV shows. So it's going to be a very interesting race. I'm really more focused on Nassau County right now, though.
Tom Suozzi, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And that's it for Last Look. To view other Last Look videos, go to our website, cityandstateny.com.